I've been in business for 14 years. I run a portfolio of companies that last year did over $250 million in aggregate revenue. A few months ago, I broke a world record for the fastest selling nonfiction book and generated over $106 million in just under 3 days. Recently, I sat down with 100 business owners where I shared tactical advice that I've learned from the past decade of business. So everything from sales to marketing to hiring to productivity and even mindset. And so I'm going to compress a decade of business knowledge that I've learned into lessons that you can use right now. Starting with number one, you're not disciplined if you like the thing you're doing. So I'll give you an example. So I used to work in the fitness industry and I had lots of fitness business owners who'd say like, I'm so disciplined because they were like, I work out at 5 a.m. every day. I never skip my meals or my workouts or whatever. But the reality was I would then ask that same business owner, hey, how have you been doing with working your leads? I haven't been working them as hard as I should, blah, 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 blah. And so I would then look at them and say, you're not disciplined because you only are consistent with the things you like. Discipline is about being able to be consistent with things you don't like. So here's me going into more depth explaining that exact concept. Do you consider yourself disciplined?
With things I like.
Right, so that's not discipline. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I bring this up because I obviously have talked to trainers and gym owners for a long time, so I know how to...
Yeah, sure.
I say this because I used to have a lot of people in the community that I ran be like, I'd see them posting every day like, God, I have discipline, up at 5 a.m., like blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, you never work your fucking leads, bro. Like, what are you talking about? You like lifting. You like boxing. That is not hard. It's like, it takes no discipline for me to hang out with Layla. Zero, right? And so because some people don't like hanging out with their wives, doesn't mean I have discipline because I do like hanging out with my wife. It just means that they have a shittier life, right? And so for you, it's like, you have to, this might be a muscle that you haven't used. Like you happen to like boxing and so you did more of it and people said, can you help me? And you said, sure. If you want to get to where you want to go, your frustration tolerance, meaning your ability to do things that you don't want to do without an immediate reward for an extended period of time is going to have to get stronger. Yeah. And the good news is that that's a skill. It's not a trait. You can learn it, which means you do 10 outreaches tomorrow and you're like, this sucked. Nothing happened. And you say, great, tomorrow I will do 20. And then you do 30 and then you do 50 and then you do 100 and you keep going. But I promise you, if you do the rule of 100, which is in that book, you do a rule of 100, you do that for 100 straight days, your business will grow.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's crazy is that people actually fully commit to it, and then like way before day 100, they're like, holy cow, my whole business has changed. But like, you have to commit to it. You have to go all in on it, and I say it's 4 hours a day. This leads me to business lesson number 2. Most already know what to do, but simply don't do it. And the main question is why? Well, number 1, because of an inability to delay gratification. Number 2, because they don't fully know how to do something. This is the most common reason in more successful business owners. And a business owner asked me this exact question, when all the information is available, why are entrepreneurs still stuck? And so this is what I told him. I'd say at the most basic level, it's because of an inability to delay gratification. And so if we just think about like, why do humans do things in general? It's because they've been rewarded more for doing what they're currently doing rather than changing what they're doing. And I think that makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, that like more of what you're currently doing is safe. And so people, once they find another point of equilibrium, it's very difficult for them to break out of that. Even if they're, quote, like mentally, like I really wish I could scale, they want to scale, but what they really want is to do what they're currently doing, which is why they're doing it. And so I think being able to clearly articulate also like the actions. So how is just like such a simple word. It's a short word, but has a lot of like depth to it, which is if I were to talk to a toddler and say, I want you to scale a business, they would just look at you like, what? Yeah. If you were to tell me, hey, can you scale this business? I'd probably say, yeah, I can. And so the specificity of a request is inversely correlated with the skill of the recipient. Meaning, if you have somebody who has very low skills, I have to say like, okay, here's how you turn on a computer. Once you turn on a computer, then you're going to open up Safari. What's Safari? It's an internet browser. What's the internet? Okay, let's explain what the internet is, right? And then eventually you're like, okay, we're going to go to Google. What's a Google? We'll get there. Don't worry. We go to Google. Okay, finally, we're going to sign up here. You're going to get an email. Once you have an email, I don't know how to type. Great, let me teach you how to type. And so the thing is like the lower the skill level of the individual, the more aggregate skills they have to learn in order to chunk up. And so sometimes people hear the word, oh, you just need to do outreach. But that is a bundled term that has 100 things underneath of it, which is like, how do I warm up a domain? How do I set, what's an opener? How do I integrate my, Klaviyo with my whatever, right? Like, how do I integrate these tools? And so there's 100 hows underneath of it. And they'll usually get stuck on one of the hows and being unwilling to try because it's so frustrating of like, I think what makes entrepreneurship feel slow is that you can try to learn something for a day and not have an outcome and then have to come back to it tomorrow. And figuring things out is by nature a wandering activity, which means that if you knew how to figure it out, then you wouldn't have to figure it out because you'd already know it. And so people do really poorly with uncertainty. And so entrepreneurship, a lot of it is just the ability to tolerate uncertainty, which feels very painful the entire time you're in the uncertain period, which is what I honestly think a lot of the pain of entrepreneurship is, wondering whether the investment you're currently making today, the thing you know you're going to lose, the money, the time, the effort, the sweat, is going to actually pay off to the thing that you hope is going to happen, and you don't know when it's going to happen. And so it's almost like if you run a marathon, you know it ends at 26 miles, or 0.2, I don't know, for you runners. But like for entrepreneurship, it's just someone saying run. Yeah. And like, I'll tell you when to stop. Yeah. And even if you, like, just that idea almost sounds torturous of like, just run. And it's like, well, how long? It's like, run. It's like, but what if my lungs start hurting? Run. Yeah. Keep running. And I think that's what makes a lot of entrepreneurship painful. And then the idea of, even me saying this, some of you guys probably had your heart rates go up, right? Even the idea of not knowing when something is going to end, or in other words, when you're going to figure it out. A lot of people just don't want to start that race. And so they know what they're currently doing, and they get more rewarded for talking about scaling, for talking about their goals, than they do for pursuing them, which involves a lot of uncertainty, pain, and frustration. So this leads me to the next lesson, where I want to talk about one of the most important mindset/skills that you need to train yourself on if you want to grow as a person and your business. And at least that's what's helped for me. And that's actually self-awareness. So I go deep on it right now. The hardest thing for people is judgment, which is like, how do I know to listen to this guy versus that guy, right? That's the hard part, because you will see conflicting advice. And if you were to ask two people who are both wealthy what someone should do, if you were to ask the Indian question, what should someone focus on, English might not be the first answer from Richard Branson. I don't know. Maybe it is. It also doesn't mean that his advice is wrong if it were different than mine, right? Maybe his advice is more right. No idea. But I think understanding what is right for you, given your existing resources and skills, is probably the most valuable thing, which is self-awareness. And so I think I've always had a decent amount of self-awareness, which has allowed me to make sure that I'm picking the products, services, information that I'm consuming the most of around whatever I believe the constraint to be. And then I would say that I'm relatively maniacal in the focus that I have around whatever the thing that's limiting me is. And so when I was like, okay, we're going to start this family office, I think I read 15 books in like 2 weeks on, different family office structures, different investment theses, books by people who ran big holdcos, just so I could get some better idea of this stuff. And I would say 15 books is not like a huge amount of information, but it was like just to give an idea of like, I did nothing else besides read. And so if I thought that sales was the issue, I think people try to solve a problem one way. I tend to approach a problem with like, I don't care which one works. I will do all of them violently. And I will will this thing through. And so if like I needed to learn sales, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'll read a sales book. It's like, I'm going to read many sales books. I'm going to consume all videos on sales. I'll hire somebody who's good at sales to teach me and review my stuff in real time. And I will keep doing this until sales is no longer my problem. And then I'll be like, what's my next issue? And then I'll just bomb the hell out of that thing. And I think people do take too little action around what the constraint is. So either they haven't properly identified the constraint of their business, or they take insufficient action to solve it, or both. And I see commitment and focus as very similar, like kind of sister twins, which is just the elimination of alternatives. And so I think most people are not that committed. And so I think it really comes down to that. Like, it's one of the things that's really difficult to explain, and like there's a few lessons like from a human nature perspective or from a skill-based perspective that are very difficult to see unless you're there, and consistency is one of them. So is volume, and they tend to be the two things that are most required in order to get to where you want to go. And so like you can't witness consistency unless you are also consistent in order to witness it. So like you can't see me come to the gym every day at 4 a.m. unless you are there every day at 4 a.m. And you can't see me work all day unless you were also here working all day. And I can say it and it takes 2 seconds, but when you witness it and you see it every single day, it has a different impact. And I think that's what what a lot of people miss out on. And like I talk about volume a lot and I repeat it so many times, and I talk about focus so much because like those are the things that really separate the people who end up winning. And the amount of volume that it takes is just so much more than you're prepared for. And I think if people really knew how much volume and repetition it took, they wouldn't begin. And so I don't even think it's a bad thing that people don't understand, because like if you really saw how far away the goalpost was, you'd be like, I can't do it. Because you can't do it. You couldn't even comprehend that because you're so far away from that type of person or that level of entrepreneur who'd be able to do it that it seems unfathomable. But you think it's a couple steps ahead of where you are, and then you get a little bit better, and then you realize it's actually this much further. But then you get a little bit better, and then you realize it's this much further. And then eventually you start to realize, like when you look back at how much you did in order to get there, and then you're like, oh, that's why. Now let's expand on the topic of distractions a bit more, because if you were to boil down most of the business wisdom that's out there, it's probably just two things, which is focus and patience. So I want to share some tactical advice on how I personally stopped getting distracted by all the shiny objects and new ideas that I have. Because every entrepreneur has enough new ideas to kill their business. So I want to provide some examples to drive that home and give you my thoughts on how I approach new ideas. I'll tell you a story. I was talking to a friend of mine. He just inherited $1 billion. His father was in private equity. He now manages their family office. And so I was talking to him about acquisition.com and school and some of the other things. And he was like, yeah, man. He said, sometimes the most profitable thing you can do is wait. And so I think that that might be the most profitable thing you can do. Like doing nothing is something. It's an action. I mean, shit. I mean, how much willpower does it take to not start new things? Yeah. A lot. A lot. Right. And so I think you should give yourself credit for like, you're banking goodwill with the business. Jeff Bezos had a speech recently that he did in Italy. Some of you guys, I shared a story of it for those who follow me on Instagram. But he talked about his rate of releasing the work. And so basically he said, if I had 30 minutes, I could write 100 ideas on the whiteboard that would destroy my company. And so you absolutely have enough ideas to kill your business. So what we want to do is prevent that from happening. And so this is super tactical, but for everybody, because this is like really, 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 really dramatically changed my trajectory as an entrepreneur. I have a lot of ideas, which is like I kind of scratch my itch of ideas because I get to idea about other people's businesses, and then I go home, and then Layla's like, "Do you want dinner?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but I forgot that we have a business too, so I wasn't allowed. I didn't have a way to mess that one up, right? And so what I do is I honestly have a document that's called Alex's Big List of Ideas. And every time I have an idea, I totally flush it out. I put a link on the doc to another doc that has a big memo that has like, this is how it work, this is what we'd make, this is how blah, 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 blah. And then I keep living my life. And then when I finally see the team, looks like they have smiles on their faces, like they're well rested, they have a glint in their eye, then I pull back out my big list of ideas. And what's interesting is that like some of the ideas that I'm like, this is going to be huge, I'm like, that's why would I think that's a good idea? Because you get so emotionally charged and sold on the idea while you're in the process of the idea, in the throes of the idea. But when you get a little bit of space, you're like, oh my God, this is how other people would hear this idea. And I agree with them. I think it's a terrible idea. But every once in a while, I'll give you an analogy from the Sandra Bullock movie with the offensive lineman. Remember that one? Blindside. So she said that, I actually think about this a lot with ideas. She said, if you like a shirt, she's like, don't buy it. But if you go home and you're still thinking about it, a week or two later, like you should probably go back and grab the shirt or whatever, right? And so I think about that with ideas. Like if I'm able to, like I have this fear, what if I forget the idea? If I forget the idea, it wasn't that good of an idea. But the ones that like keep you up at night, that keep gnawing at you, those are the ones that like I'll flesh out more and more and more, but I still have to release the work at a rate that the business can handle. And so then it gives you respect for the output capacity of the business. And then what ends up happening, which you realize as you scale up, is that manpower is almost always the limiter. It's talent. Which is why you see the billionaires on stage and they're like, guys, you just got to get a good team, find good people and get out of their way. But the issue is that good people don't want to work for you, not you, entrepreneurs in general. And so that's why we have to go through this kind of bootstrap phase sometimes where we have to prove that we can earn the right to get true A-level talent. Because if you had the best AI person in the entire world, you could have a multi-billion-dollar company within the next 6 months. The problem is that guy doesn't want to work for you. And so it's like, who do I need to become and what do I need to build in order to get that level of talent to come with me? And so we actually in my opinion, a lot of the entrepreneurial journey is creating the proof that then allows you to attract the talent that's required to build the next thing. Like the level of talent we were able to attract after we sold Gym Launch versus while we were scaling Gym Launch, night and day, not even close. And so I see that as the trajectory. And what also ends up happening is that you end up becoming a collector of talent. And so and if you do right by people throughout the entire process, what happens is the stars stay around and they come with you from thing to thing. And so all of a sudden the bench of stars just keeps getting bigger, and they don't want to work with other people because they're like, we have a great team, we have a great culture, we know how we do things here. And so in the beginning of your career, you have no stars. You're the only star. And maybe you're a half star, right? But eventually you'll get one other star and you're like, oh my God. But the reality is, like, if everyone thought, like, man, if I only had 10 of these people, I could be 20 times bigger. You will get there. It's just, it takes way more not stars that you thought were stars that you then have to fire and replace with another person that's also not a star to get another person to then replace with another person that's not a star. And I fundamentally believe that the reason that you can scale so much faster the second time or third time around, who here this is not their first business? Can you raise your hand real quick? Okay, cool. Keep your hands raised. If this is not your first business and this business, you scaled faster than the businesses you did before, keep your hand raised. Right? And like, why is that? It's not like the physics of business changed. It's just because your pattern recognition improves. Yeah. And in order to get the pattern recognition, it's like you have to just get punched in the face a bunch of times with shitty people. And so like, for me, like, I know a vertical stack of what a sales-driven org looks like up to a few hundred sales guys. Like, I know what that stack looks like. I know what an SDR looks like. I know what an SDR manager looks like. I know what a closer looks like. I know what a closer manager looks like. I know what a director of sales looks like. I know what a VP of sales looks like. And they have different archetypes, and they have different skills, and they have different behaviors. But if you've never done it, then you hire a VP of sales and he sucks. And you hire another VP of sales and he sucks. You hire another VP of sales and she sucks. And then all of a sudden, one comes in and you're like, oh, you don't suck. This is amazing. And then from that point going forward, either that person comes with you or you know exactly how to pattern match. And so you find the person really fast. And fundamentally, every level of the business, it's kind of like bricks, right? You like keep putting these level of bricks as you scale. The problem is that only one of those bricks prevents you, and sometimes for years, because you are lacking this hole and you don't know what it looks like when it's right. And that's one of the big issues. And so the goal is like, how can I be willing to have a hard conversation, which means that I might like this person as a person, but they're not doing their job. And how quickly can I close that gap so that I can replace them with somebody who's good? The hard part is that we don't like having hard conversations. Yeah. And so it's like, I mean, I do like the quote, like, the difference between where you are and where you want to be is the number of hard conversations you're willing to endure. Yeah. And a lot of people just aren't. So to answer the original question of like, why don't people do what they want to do? A lot of them just can't have a hard conversation.
Real quick, check this out. So if you aren't sure what strategic competitive advantage you should be doubling down on, I'd love to invite you out to one of our scaling workshops that we have here in Vegas at our headquarters, and my team can actually work with you on it. But before you do that, you can download our free $100 million scaling roadmap, where you can plug in your information, and it will give you basically your step where you're at in the scaling process, and ultimately give you the things that you can help get to the next level. But like I said, if you want help from my team, you can book a call after you download this. It's free, and we'd love to see if we can help you out.
This leads me to the next lesson. The person with the longest time horizon wins. Fundamentally, there's so much competition. Some of the only alpha that's left over, meaning arbitrage of value, exists for people who are simply willing to wait and endure longer. So let's expand on that. So I think the person with the longest time horizon wins, as long as that time horizon is reverse engineered to some level of reality. So I think Elon is the richest man in the world right now because he has wanted to build rockets, wanted to build cars, and wanted to go to space since he was like 7. And so he has wanted to do this one thing his whole life, and he said it in his, I don't know if you guys have seen this, like his Zip 2, like when he was like, hadn't even sold his first company, he was like, I think cars are really cool, like electric cars, can you imagine? And like rock, like he's talking about this then, like this has been what he's wanted to do his whole life. I would say for me, I would say that my time horizon is not as long as Elon's, which is probably why I'm not as rich as Elon. But for me, it's like I can probably see like, call it 3 to 5 from now. And I plan for that. And beyond that, I'm like, I don't know, I might be in a different person, different life, who knows? But that's kind of as far away as I can see. It's very difficult to have vision when you have bills to pay. Mm-hmm. And so you have to get that situated first, in my opinion. You have to get your like personal stuff figured out, and then you'll buy yourself breathing room to think further.
Yeah. So in that case, then, am I thinking 3 to 5 years?
No, I think you figure out how to like go to $1 million a year and like don't worry about anything else.
Mm-hmm. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I think you think, how do I go from 100K to $1 million? That's my whole focus, and you can do that in a year.
Yeah.
And like when you do that, because the thing is when you do that first level of going to like, 100 to $1 million or 100 to 300, whatever the number is, right? you will have more resources and more skills. And so what happens is your vision of the board will change. You'll see the way the game's played differently. And so I see the people who are like the best at the game as the people who see reality the most clearly. And so if you've been doing something for a long time in your business and it hasn't been getting you what you want, it's usually because you don't see reality as clearly as you think you do. You see distortions. And so I think as people go up and up in wealth, it's because they actually are better at predicting what's going to happen, which is why they make more money than other people. And so that's why I see entrepreneurship as one of the best sources of personal development, because you get slapped really quickly to find out whether you were right or wrong. So I want to quickly talk about AI. It's a hot topic. Some people are very excited, some people are very scared, and some people think it's going to replace everyone and everything. And so I'm going to share my views on AI as the next portion of this. TLDR, AI is not going to change the fundamentals that make business business, but it will change the tools available to the players, and sometimes in the future, even the players themselves. There's opportunity more now than ever before because the leverage of the opportunity has increased. And so if we define leverage as the difference between what you put in and what you put out, if you can get more out for what you put in, then you have higher leverage. And so with AI, this is where there'll be the first, one-person billion-dollar companies, 10-person billion-dollar companies, et cetera. And so people who have a more AI-enhanced business, which the business that you're in